Politics was founded for a good reason: to organize society, to put things in order. But this has changed now. It is no longer the case. Politics has become a game of control and trade. And as a result of that, societies are falling apart. Societies are falling into a narrow bubble of political reality. Societies have become blind in this game. How did this happen? Why have we come to this point? Well, for a combination of reasons. One of which is that because we're social animals, because we're designed by nature to seek belonging, to possess group identity. And this attribute is used against us. By whom? Well, by weak people in politics, by insecure people in the authorities. And the number is increasing. I guess the question we must ask is, do we care to pursue truth? And if so, how much do we believe from people involved in politics today? And if you think about social media platforms and news channels on TV, I would think that you won't find so much to believe. I mean, think about it. A lot of these platforms and news channels appear to create narratives that align with the political interests they support, and they do the opposite for their opponents. I mean, how could you believe anything in a world like this? Truth has been moved somewhere else, behind some dirty glass that you cannot see it clearly anymore. This happens not because truth is difficult to verify, it happens because there is so little demand for verification. So, group interest seems to be more important than truthful politicians. And the appeal who gets into the power seems to be more important than anything in this world. And political orientation has become a membership badge. By nature, we all know that there is so much dishonesty in politics. Yet we rely on the stories we tell ourselves about it. We tell ourselves that politics is a bad game. We tell ourselves that everybody lies. And our side is fighting for us. This kind of stories led us to stop even critically understand what politics is for. And that could be natural response because what else must we do? Problem is that we don't stop here. We contribute to the political game in some ways and another. And sometimes we're not aware of our playing, of our roles. One of the roles, for example, is that we reinforce the language that is used by people in politics. And the problem is that this language is directed, it's loaded, and a lot of times persuasive. See, people in politics use language styles, and we come to accept their ways of communication, their styles. Maybe not right away, but eventually we do. And not only that, we use those styles ourselves in the end. If you think about it, diplomatic language, or the language that is used by people in politics, creates symbols. And a symbol is one of the most important essential of group identity. It strengthens the group identity more than you can imagine. And I mean, think about these phrases: we will fight for the poor, or we're a free country, or we're about democracy. These phrases represent a spot for you to sit in within the group. I will get into the political language or diplomatic language more later in this video. Once you settle your spot within the group, the membership badge that you have becomes a fence for the group identity. It protects it, and it marks whose insight and whose claim must be counted. As much as a fact like this sound depressing, but I would say is an essential part of our survival as societies. Interesting, right? One problem, though, is that this enables us to run away from discussion with other people when their ideas conflict with our group interest or group identity. We leave no room for discussion. We do not disagree necessarily, but we reject their ideas. And in reality, we tolerate dishonesty from the elite of the group more than facts that share by another person that who's part from another group. And when we are unable to discuss but disagree in a form of a rejection, what options are left for us to do, to have? Well, the option that say go away. So simply do not sit with me, do not have conversation. Either accept what I believe to be true about politics or go away. And honestly, this is one of the things that leads to polarization, which is another topic that is worth full discussion. And this did not come out of nowhere. See, politics is a game, and people who are involved with this game play in different many roles, in so many roles. One of which, for example, they influence what a society must fear, what a society must desire. It determines, or at least try to determine the society needs, and it is successful in some ways and another. So politics has played this role to shape the public imagination about what are the society's values, what must be changed within the society. And the ideal form of politics, I would say, is when politics is able to discover society's needs and address society's values, not affect it, not create it, not shape it in today's world, because our world is broken. A system like that doesn't work perfectly. If you pay attention to the governments of today's world, you'd find when they emphasize a particular problem, then and only then does the solution gain value. For example, no one would complain about the quality of education system in the local schools until a politician dramatized the lack of teaching supervision. Maybe a problem like that may not be as harmful when politics is involved, like um, when it helps to improve education system. But what would be a problem is when a politician dramatized the need to print new curriculum for the schools if the idea was purely founded for a business purpose. And of course, they would hide their intentions with lies and more lies. And they don't stop here. They they determine which problems are seen more urgent and which institutions are capable of addressing them. I mean, problems to identify problems and suggest solutions must go through the process must go through the political discourse, of course, because the political discourse at the end is the representation of people in the authority. But but we can't believe everything they say because simply people are weak. People can change and be evil and bring so much destructions to the world. Now this kind of an extreme side of when politics has gone abuse the power, which has had happened in our modern history, if you think about it. See, the public is not quietly aware of the tricks that is used in politics to determine things, to put laws into the institutions and constitutions of the countries. And it seems to me that the membership badge was constructed in a blind trust. Of course, this is when it comes to weak people in the politics, in the authorities, which through which they abuse power. But when strong and mature people are in the politics, they serve. They do not abuse the power. They know because they know what it means to be a human and what is a human experience in terms of value. So they value the human experience more. And one thing we must all understand that social dynamics are intertwined with politics in a very, very complex system. See, politics is a social order, a paper form of social order that constructed by the minority in the country, which is the politicians and people who are involved in politics in a way or another, activists and journalists. But then you know that the minority, the politicians who are running the country, are chosen by the majority. And that is a democratic form of authority. What a rhyme. So it is interesting, the majority have the freedom to choose their political representation in the authority. And their representation determines what the majority must fear, desire, and what must be the order for the majority. It sounds interesting. I'm not saying that democracy is a bad system, but what I'm saying is that we can't trust our political representation in a blind trust, just believing what they think is right or believing the language they use because their language and the way and today politics is no longer a service. And all of this comes back to the human need to belong. We need to form groups. We need to construct group identities. And now politics are involved in this. So, and that's why we are not able to direct um, politics in the best interest of all. That's why we fail, because the stronger the need becomes, the weaker the demand for credibility becomes for the politics. And this gives a wide room to the political discourse to play on its own terms when it comes to this game. And people who are involved in politics, they play more with this game. The majority of people do not play. Uh, so therefore, they're not going to be good as much as a someone that is involved with the game all the time. So the one who plays more become better, of course, and that's going to win. But when a problem remains unsolved for a long time, it creates more problem of all kinds. See, politics has become a social identity. It is being compared to race, religion, nationality, lifestyle. I mean, there is no wrong with constructing new identities as long as there is a critical understanding of them. And the question is, do people question their political representation in the authority? Of course, there is so much else going on within societies in the social dynamics that let politics have almost all the power. And I mean, think about the lifestyle of the majority of people. The majority of people work 40 hours per week, and the rest of the time is not even optimal for other basic needs for living. So there is not much investment by the majority of people in the political game. So they're not going to be the best part or best player in the political game. Then one would ask, what is the perfect version of democracy? Or what is the ideal form of democracy? Well, I have thought about it so much, but I don't think I could answer that question very well. So I'm going to leave it to a quote or something that I borrowed that would probably touch this question in some ways or another. Is that weak people create bad times, and bad times create strong people, and strong people create good times, and good times create weak people. So it's a cycle. The great people in politics who built countries because they came out of hard times. And those hard times were made by who? by weak people. And then strong and great people in politics create good times, and these good times create bad people or weak people. So that is the idea, I think, when it comes to what is going on in our world, in a sense or another. I'm trying to describe it, as much as concise, or let's say precise, as much as I would think it is. So, but yeah, I feel like I add some more drama to the topic, but I believe every bit of that quote. One of the things that we must address is the element of creativity in the diplomatic language, or the way that politicians trying to talk or communicate ideas that are loaded, that are indirect, that are used for purpose, not necessarily statement of descriptions. And one of ways I have noticed is that a lot of politicians use logical fallacies. Logical fallacies are statements that seem to be logical in order. When it comes to this kind of statements, I've actually seen a phrase in the internet. I really don't remember the source, but it is very close to what a lot of people say in Europe, politicians in Europe, about immigration, when addressing immigration as a problem that causing the countries, whatever they say. So the statement is, immigrants are taking your jobs. Why should we let this continue? I won't let it happen on my watch. Now, this statement has several logical fallacies. One of them is hasty generalization. So the politician applies this specific statement at all immigrants without an exception, which is not necessarily true when it comes to facts to check. The second part says, why should we let this continue? Well, this part is is emotionally evoking. It's appeal to fear. That's what called for the logical fallacies, and they know that people respond to emotions, and doesn't actually follow the first part of the statement in any sense, but is used to persuade people and evoke their emotions. And the other part is, I won't let it happen on my watch. It's an interesting part. It feels that the person who says that he's a hero will solve a problem that he didn't even address the problem. He says taking your jobs, immigrants are taking your jobs, and adding this last part to the statement gives the impression that the first part was actually true, and people do not critically analyze every phrase, every part of the statement, every phrase of a statement. So therefore, this is a strong one. It gives the impression that there is a hero that is stepping into this specific problem, seems to be problem to the politician, or maybe you just want to, or they just want to get into the power with this specific kind of path, which is very common in Europe now, if you think about it. Also, we must mention that sometimes some politicians use this kind of um, statements, or use the logical fallacies unintentionally. They have no idea, but they just know by intuition that evoking emotions is one of the ways that they get attention, so to speak. So it could be unintentional or poor thinking. So when they do not mean something and then they state that in public. So it happens that, but very rarely though. I would say the hardest part about statements that include logical fallacies is it is hard to verify whether they're true or not, because the speaker may not even care about the truth. So they use it to play. So that could be something really not easy, like to verify some thing the politician says, it's not actually a fact, not even a statement, not complete. So it becomes a tool only, just to do something, just for a purpose. The saddest part about statements that include logical fallacies is that they are common in today's world because of social media platforms and news channels. You know, these kind of statements that have emotional evoking features would appear first on, let's say, on Facebook or Instagram or all social media platforms because they are designed for the content that is most attractive to appear first. And it's our nature to react what evokes emotions because we can't think critically all the times. It is not, it is, it's energy draining, to be honest. So a lot of news channels and these platforms, they emphasize on these kind of statements. So they reappear for people and they get repeated over and over until people react so much. It becomes something really, really important over something seems less important, but in reality could be opposite. So the repetition of this language, the political language in this kind of form, becomes a natural language that people accept, and that's when it comes to the way that we accept, because we need to accept um, the order, the system, because otherwise it becomes rebellious. So the repetition of this language by political discourse, let's say, or people involved in politics, it get people exposed the language so much so it becomes natural to people. So people accept the language and then use it themselves. So the creative language and dishonesties by people, use of logical fallacies by people in politics becomes a natural thing in the society because of media, because of repetition, because of exposure. Now, this kind of language has become part of our functioning reality. What are the reasons why we have come to this point? Well, I will now go into reasons. One aspect that I would address here is the social dynamics in relation to political communication forms, and the other would be about social dynamics in relation to the limited access to power. The political language or diplomatic language goes through phases and it changes over time. And one model to understand this specific phenomenon is what we call the Overton window. What is Overton window? The Overton window is the range of ideas where society find it acceptable to discuss and to support. So it's a zone for normal ideas. And this conceptual framework was developed by Joseph P. Overton, who's an American public policy thinker. So this specific framework is just a zone where ideas can be discussed for ideas that accepted in the society in terms of discussion and support. So these ideas are inside the Overton window, these kind of ideas. But the radical or extreme ideas that fall outside of this window is not fixed. So it changes over time. And what changes is society and the dynamics of society simply, not politicians themselves. They don't change it. But what the politicians would do would suggest an idea that seems to be radical or extreme at the beginning. People would not accept it. People would react to it. People would criticize it. But then next year, another person, or maybe the same, let's say one same party, would suggest the same idea, maybe with a little change, and then would not get as much as a reaction as it did in past. And the more this idea, the particular idea is exposed to people, then the better or the closer it gets to the Overton window. So as long as it is being exposed to people, at some point, some people would um, discuss it. At least would discuss it. May not separate at the beginning, but with time, it becomes inside this window. So, so that is one of the ways that political discourse plays on on changing the policies and changing the laws of the countries in our world today. So it seems like you plant a seed and wait it until it grows. It may not grow, but you try it in different ways. So a lot of politicians and policy thinker know this specific fact, so they plan for it. So people must be aware of this kind of things. Otherwise, the societies are directed to the ways that they don't understand. When it comes to power, people have no option unless directing their behavior within the norms that are accepted in their society. For instance, let's say in a society where, or a country where a prime minister has lied too many times in the term when they were in authority, but then at the end achieved something significantly big for the people of the country. And when people accept their achievement and forget their lies, apparently forgetting their lies because they never talk about it anymore, but the significant achievement is what cover their lies in a way or another for the society. In a way that is implicit. Like people do not go to each other and say, "Oh, let's forget their lies," but what they do, they accept that prime minister because it has achieved something big. So it becomes a norm, and especially for the countries that are broken, that has a lot of corruption and war, and so not all countries are same, of course, when it comes to this power dynamics and social dynamics and behavior directing towards the norms. But let's say another norm would be when people think that, okay, well, we do not have to really worry about the lies of politics because everybody lies in the politics. So if no one else is talking about the dishonesty or lies from a politician, then why should I care? So it becomes like a responsibility that spread on everyone. Therefore, nobody speaks because it seems to be fine and okay. So, and that's also one of the things that is very common in our countries. And that is also one of the things that led us to accept the dishonesties, and these dishonesty have become normal. So it would be logical to say that the acts of dishonesty are false. So nobody would point out to the authority faults, but they would complain when the authorities are keep making dishonesties. It feels more of something like diffusion of responsibility across the group. But this isn't necessarily true every time, because there are times that individuals would point to the authorities' faults and would raise their voice and would change the government, those people who were the great people that would sacrifice for the society. So, for the majority of people in a lot of countries that I can notice now, the individual interest comes first and the survival comes first. And I don't blame them when it comes to survival because that's how we are naturally designed. So people would not, let's say, point out to the let's say, crimes that made by a figure in authority, because if they did, then their life is at risk because those people are in authority. So they would be more about the survival or making their life safe regardless of the price. So yeah, it is understandable. I mean, I would personally say sometimes I can, like in this specific video, I did not want to mention the country, even the name of the country, without naming the figures in the politics, because I know it might risk me to danger when it comes to the freedom of speech for a person like me living in that country. I guess what I'm trying to say is that power affects our behavior. If I know my life is in danger, I would not point out because I know the safety of my life comes first. But regardless, when it comes to the truth, at some point, either you would explode or you're going to tell the truth. So, yeah, you would prioritize the safety or the survival first, but then at the end, truth will win because you're going to say it. And that's my case too. At the end, I'll talk and more precisely when it comes to the faults that those people in the authority that had committed against people, so to speak. So what also I want to say is that there is a positive sign that societies change and people and good people show up. Good people and strong people at the end will come to the game and change. And like I said, they will be changed too. Other people would come. So it's kind of a dynamic of ups and downs when it comes to politics. But to see it clearly, you would say, if like let's say compared our today's life with 100 years ago or 100 years ago to 200 years ago, you would find that we are toward the positive path. Things are changing for the better in most. You would say that things are changing for the better for the most of the time. So I would say we have hope, and me and you, we can contribute in our ways um, for a better society. If you as an individual is not okay, then society won't. So let's work together to contribute to our societies, all the world I'm talking about, because at the end we're all one big country. I'll see you in the next video.